What's up guys, Asian here again with another PTS video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Vampire, and I think Vampire might be a little bit overtuned right now for magic DPS, at least for some classes. Also the case with Stamina DPS as well. It might be overtuned for, at the very least, Stamina Templar, not sure on other Stamina classes yet, but Vampire, as it stands right now, there is one ability in particular that is possibly expanding the skill gap more than what Zaz probably intended to do, and that is the ability called Blood Frenzy. So first of all, let's go ahead and take a look at the Vampire skill that I'm talking about here. So I am a Vampire, this is the PTS, and we now have the new skill line here with Vampire, so we have all 5 abilities here, but the one we're going to be focusing in mostly on is going to be Blood Frenzy. So I do have one of the morphs here, Sated Fury. As you can see on the other side is Simmering Fury. Now this is a toggleable ability, and while it is toggled on, it basically drains your health for what you see there. As your Vampire stage goes up, this health drain goes down. So both morphs have a base of 660 additional weapon and spell damage, and yes, that weapon and spell damage is affected by buffs like Major Brutality and Major Sorcery, so it actually ends up being much larger than the 660 that's advertised on here. Now, the downside of running Sated Fury or Simmering Frenzy is that you can't heal, you can't be healed by anybody other than yourself. So basically, you're going to need to rely on self-heals in order to, avoid potentially getting your health to a point where you might end up dying because your healer isn't necessarily going to be able to heal you out of this. Now, there are a few classes out there that do have self-heals already baked into their class toolkit. You'll notice that I'm on a Magicka Nightblade. So what do Magicka Nightblades have? They have Swallow Soul, so I can deal 8-6-1-7 magic damage and heal myself for 35% of the damage I inflict every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. So about half of that, about a third of that would be roughly 3k healing every 2 seconds or so. So a little bit less than what I would get out of Simmering Fury, just because Simmering Fury would end up doubling. Where is it? World Vampire. So, see here, 1728 health every 1 second, so about 3400 health every second or so, every 2 seconds. So I would end up being a little bit under that if I was using Swallow Soul. However, Swallow Soul, the heal does refresh itself every time I cast it, so if it's my spammable, I'm getting that 3k tick every single second. So I would end up actually out-healing Sated Fury, and I'd be very close to out-healing Simmering Frenzy as well, because that would be doubled up to about 3400 health every second or so. How do I offset the little bit of health there from Simmering Fury? Well, I would just use something like Siphoning Attacks, which heals me for 1495 with each light and heavy attack that I happen to deal. So I'm healing myself for about 1500 every second, about 3000 every 2 seconds for Swallow Soul, and of course our bow proc also has a heal as well, so I can deal 19,000 damage and heal for half of that as long as I'm within melee range. And chances are I probably will be within melee range, so I'm getting that 9.5k heal every 5 light attacks, every 5 seconds, and you work that out, it's about, a little less than 2k heal per second here. So Magicka Nightblades have a bunch of self-healing in their toolkit, which means I'm able to run Simmering Frenzy really easily, and that actually bumps up my DPS by a very large margin. By how big of a margin? Well, here are a couple of parses to kind of give you guys an idea. So this is the parse where I am not a vampire at all. I'm using Swallow Soul here as my spammable. And you can see I pulled 82.5k. Pretty respectable, not that bad for a Magicka Nightblade. Now, what happens when we have 100% uptime on Simmering Frenzy? As a reminder, this is the one where it doubles the amount of health that is drained and also doubles the amount of weapon and spell damage that you get. So instead of 660 weapon and spell damage for 1750 health every second, I'm getting 1320 spell damage with, obviously, all the buffs. So it ends up being more than 1320, and I have to out-heal 3400 health every second or so. You can see here, this bumped up my DPS by a pretty large margin, 89.3k. So, 82.5, 89.3. So we're talking about a 7k bump in DPS. That is definitely noticeable. You're talking about 8 to 9% increase in DPS, and I have 100% uptime on Simmering Frenzy here. Just to give you guys an idea of what my health looked like while during that parse, and I was keeping an eye on my health here, resources health percent. You can see that here's my health percentage, and while we did dip under 50%, I was able to keep myself pretty topped up. I was most concerned about execute, which was probably around here or so, where you see that red line start to go up, but you can see I never really dipped too far. It definitely was a little bit riskier here in execute, just because you obviously aren't using Swallow Soul anymore, you're running Impale instead. But as long as I was keeping up siphoning attacks as well as using my bow proc, I was able to out heal the damage there. So 100% uptime on Simmering Frenzy here. Take a look at our spell damage, 6,336 compared to a measly 4,620 here. So that's a really huge buff, so almost 2k spell damage buff here, which resulted in our 7k DPS increase. Now there is another vampire ability that is probably going to be useful, and that's going to be Eviscerate. Here we're going to be using Arterial Burst here. Now in terms of actual damage that it deals, you can see here it deals 9574 magic damage for 1858 Magicka. Let's take a look at Elemental Weapon, which is a very popular spammable here. This would deal 8617 magic damage for 2965 Magicka. So less damage for more Magicka. So favor 2 Arterial Burst here. And if we take a look at Swallow Soul here, 8617 for 2565. Again, losing out to Vampire Arterial Burst. On top of Arterial Burst, it also helps out that it deals more damage based on our missing health, so we're getting some more damage out here, especially if we combine this with Untitled Fury or Simmering Frenzy, where our health is going to end up dipping below 50 several times here, and while we use this ability while we're under 50% health, it'd always be a critical hit, so we will get a little bit more crits out of Arterial Burst than our crit chance would normally allow for because of that additional effect here. So we're dealing more damage for less Magicka, and we get 2 additional effects which would further increase the damage of this ability. So this is a potentially pretty decent spammable to use here. Now I did not actually try this out as a spammable compared to Swallow Soul as a vampire, but I did try out using Arterial Burst with Simmering Frenzy here, and whoops, wrong button there, and that parse ended up pulling then the 89.3k here, so pretty much identical here, and we did end up dropping Simmering Frenzy, so we didn't get 100% uptime here. This will automatically toggle off once you get below a certain health threshold, so I had to retoggle it back on, which I'm sure contributed to why the DPS ended up being about the same. But if we take a look at the amount of DPS that Arterial Burst did, 10,776 compared to Swallow Soul's 8653, and this is, again, with Simmering Frenzy having toggled off a few times here during the parse here. So just taking a look at DPS values here, Arterial Burst is the stronger spammable here by a pretty good margin, about 2k DPS or so, so that's about a 20 and 25% increase in DPS from Swallow Soul here. So pretty strong spammable here. So if we use Arterial Burst, combine it with Simmering Frenzy, we have a potentially pretty powerful build here. Now, Simmering Frenzy is a toggleable, so this might not necessarily be good for raids, just because you're obviously taking more damage in raids. In a trial, you're not taking any sort of outgoing damage. Dummy's not hitting you. So in a trial like, for example, Lakestes, where you have arena-wide AoE damage that's always going to be active, might not be a good idea to keep Simmering Frenzy on at all times. This is where that note that I made about increasing the skill gap comes in. This is a toggleable ability, which means you can toggle this on and off as you deem fit in a fight. Very good DPS are going to know when to toggle this off, so they anticipate high damage coming out because they know the mechanics of the fight. They'll toggle it off to get healed back up, and once you're in this sort of lull in the fight where you're not anticipating getting a lot of damage out, then you'll toggle it back on and deal with the damage that you're getting from having it toggled on. So for a Magicka Nightblade, for example, if I was fighting, let's say, Lakestes, I'd probably toggle it off once I see my health dip around maybe 50 to 60% or so, and then toggle it back on once I'm up to full. Or I would be able to toggle it off during the beam phase, toggle it back on once all the AoEs are done, and move on from there. With Yolna Queen, for example, very easy to kind of know when to toggle it on or off. You see that the Roaring Flare is coming up, you toggle it off. Once the flare is gone, you toggle it back on, and so on and so forth. So this just increases the skill gap here, because not only do you know when to need to know how to toggle it on and off, it also sort of reinforces having to learn the mechanics of the fight, and obviously it is going to be dependent on how well you're able to play that particular build, being able to toggle things on and off, paying attention to the fight, having good healers to heal you up when you toggle it off, so you're able to toggle it on a little bit faster, and so on. So the way the vampires are right now, this is just the first week of the PTS, so 6.0.0. I do think it is going to need a little bit of a rebalance. I would not be surprised if Arterial Burst, the cost was increased or the damage was nerfed to bring it more in line with a spammable like Swallow Soul or Elemental Weapon. I also wouldn't be surprised if Blood Frenzy ended up seeing a nerf as well to the amount of weapon and spell damage that it provides. Maybe down to maybe 400 or so, but maintaining the equal amount of health drain. So you're still getting that 1750 health drain per second, you're just getting less weapon damage instead. So for classes with the self-heal, so that would be Nightblades, Wardens potentially, Magicka Templars, and Stamina Templars as well, because Stamina Templars do use Ritual Retribution. For those three classes, it's pretty much a no-brainer at this point. You're pretty much going to be a Vampire, at the very least a Stage 1 for that Simmering Frenzy. Even Sated Frenzy is going to be DPS increase. So this was with Sated Frenzy, so this is the one that does not increase in cost as you continue to go up, and I did use Arterial Burst here, and we pulled 84.6k or so. So this is still going to be a DPS increase, so we're still seeing a 2k DPS increase from being a Vampire at Stage 1 with just Sated Fury. So right now, for those three classes at least, Vampirism is going to be the way to go, despite all the downsides that come with being a Vampire. But you only need to be Stage 1, so it's actually not that big of a deal here. But that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think of this whole Vampire potentially being the thing for DPS again, and how you guys feel about that. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.